Trump has railed against South Africa. He's railed against the South African administration. He's railed against what's happening in South Africa. How come? Why? What is going on in South Africa? Hey, PD. Hey, Nick. Thank you so much for making yourself available. You guys have both been on my channel before. I'll have the links in the description below where people can find you. For anybody who's watching, please subscribe, comment, like. Please comment. Love your comments. And it helps me beat the algorithm and it helps this channel grow. Okay, it is Tuesday, the 20th of January at 12 minutes past 7 UK time. Here we go. So what is, either of you can start, what is Trump's beef with South Africa?
PD, go for it.
Okay, well, why does Trump dislike the administration of Cyril Ramaphosa so much? It's a very interesting subject, one that we could expand on for some length of time. So we look at the various issues, and I think one of the things that Trump does is he bypasses what he's actually really trying to target, and he couches it in a language which obfuscates the real reason for what he's doing. So he called out Ramaphosa about white genocide and the genocide of the Afrikaners in South Africa. So I would like to say, I think that the real reason Trump dislikes Cyril Ramaphosa's administration so much is because South Africa is a terrorist hub. It's been grey listed, which means that it launders terrorist and drug money, which is an incredibly harmful thing to be on the grey list, because countries like Yemen, South Sudan are on that list, and it deters investment like you would never believe. Nobody is want to go and invest in South Africa when it's even been on the grey list several years ago. You know, even if it were cleared, it's still a stain on the country. So South Africa is a hub for money laundering, for drugs, and for terrorism. Why do I say that? Well, the government, the South African government, and just to explain to any American viewers, it's called the GNU, the Government of National Unity. And this is a ANC-led government with other parties. There's a coalition. They are in full knowledge of who is operating within the country. And these are organizations such as M23, ADF. These are two terrorist groups that operate in the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. There are also others. There's been the Lord's Resistance Army, that's Joseph Kony, who operates in Uganda. Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, all these movements have what are called offices in South Africa. Now, a lot of the drugs are coming in through Mozambique, Cabo Delgado, that's in northern Mozambique. And your listeners may recall that there have been some tremendous, horrendous atrocities committed quite recently in Cabo Delgado. And Wagner were employed. Wagner came out to try and quell the insurgency, Islamic extremism. And they lasted about 2 weeks. A load of them were killed, unfortunately, and they exited. And now they've got the Rwandan Defense Force policing the situation. It's very, there's a lot of turmoil there, and the atrocities committed are horrendous. The other thing about Cabo Delgado is that this is the site of one of the largest reserves of natural gas on the planet. And that has, yes.
Excuse me a second, right? Because
yes,
you are a journalist that specializes in Africa. And I want to bring Nick in as well, right? Because I want to get his contribution. So I'm going to be manage the conversation. So you both say, so thank you so much. But in a nutshell, South Africa is a base for lots and lots of insurgent and terrorist groups that then go around terrorizing the Middle East and other countries in Africa. A former British colony. Nick, do you want to add to this?
That's where I would come in. very interesting detail there from PD. For a broader context-setting discussion, my perspective is that South Africa has always been very much under the suzerainty of the Anglo-American establishment, and what actually played a foundational role in that the formation of that establishment. And so, the way I look at the South African political landscape, I perceive the African National Congress, the ANC, to be an organization that was long ago captured by that Anglo-American establishment, and South Africa to be a country where very little happens that doesn't suit the Anglo-American establishment. And so when I survey the comments and actions of Trump, I'm more inclined to sit back and say it's all a show. Something's coming down the line. It could well be that, like no time in the past, South Africa's resources are strategically important, and a move may be made to increase the efficiency of the extraction of those resources, which has kind of swooned before the wave of degrowth inducing policies that PD was referring to. South Africa's been the object of a concerted attack trying to prevent it from establishing itself with a large middle class and growing in a way that would be commensurate with the vast riches that lie beneath the soil of the country. So I look at it and I say, okay, Trump is making a noise about this white genocide, and there is an element of substance there. There does seem to be a concerted attack on rural Afrikaans households. And Trump is making a big noise about race laws. And okay, there is substance, but that's not what it's about.
Could it be about resources? Could it be that here's this resource-rich country, and you say the Anglo-Americans? I think more of City of London, right? But we both agree, hostile alien forces that are out to keep South Africa destabilized, so they make it easier to extract the resources and also use it as a base for other forces of destabilization in other parts of Africa.
Well,
I wonder.
This is where I think the distinction you just pointed to is actually very important. If you live in my mind and you focus on an Anglo-American establishment that you don't think is at internal civil war, then that leads you to see Trump's actions as a facade. If you are more in the camp of our friends Susan Kokinda and Alex Craner, then you see Trump as a thorn in the side of the City of London, a person who's trying to undermine the City of London, and you will take his actions more from the perspective of him playing 5D chess with the City of London power base. The third view, which is out there now and receiving a lot of attention all of a sudden because of the activities of Shi Jinping, is that we are moving towards a Pax Judaica with Israel in control of the world, and that the City of London and the Anglo-American establishment have actually been co-opted by Israel. So those are the three sort of dominant revisionist perspectives on history. Of course, there's the fourth, which is where most people live, which is that it's geopolitics as usual, and these leaders are just from time to time crazy. But I don't think any of us would subscribe to that kind of notion. Yes. And so being in the first camp, the one, I still think that there's an Anglo-American establishment in control and that it's not all about the City of London. My view is that you don't take Trump's actions and statements well, least of all his statements, at face value, and you look behind the story of what might the establishment want to see happen in South Africa.
Yes, Nick, that's such a great point. And we were talking about this before we came on camera, is that there's what's going on, the world, the machinations between all these power brokers, and there's the three of us as tiny little, I don't know, little kids, or perhaps even ants just looking into, well, what do you think that is? And I think, well, I think it's this. No, I think it might be that. I think it is. We're not privy. So it is all speculation, including my speculations and that of Susan's and Tom's and Alex Craner's that it's the City of London, and yours that it's the Anglo-American, and yours, whatever else there might be. Okay, now, thank you. Petey, you mentioned the resources. Now, I'm not fully aware what resources South Africa has. I know that it has the potential to be an incredibly rich country.
Well, okay, so if I can just clarify my stance on the Anglo-American and the City of London. So prior to Trump, I would have said that this was the special relationship that has always existed between America and the United Kingdom. It's a long-standing old relationship, and various presidencies have come in and tried to destroy it, one of them being JFK. I see Trump as trying to destroy that. I mean, he's already exposed the fact that he no longer wants that special relationship. So whereas a year ago, I would have used the term Anglo-American alliance, I would now no longer use it because it doesn't fit with the current model.
And just on that, PD, I agree with you because, the Europeans, they sent, 21 soldiers to Greenland to resist an American invasion. They're very upset with the United States.
Upset, aren't they?
21 soldiers, Nick. The US Army would just crumble. And that was in a conversation. People should go and watch that video with Alex Craner on that yesterday. But also, I do recommend people go check out the conversation I had with PD Lawton about Burkina Faso and what Ibrahim Traore is doing in South Africa, in Burkina Faso.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what are the resources, PD, in South Africa?
Okay, so just go back one quick thing to the British establishment in South Africa. So we're going back to the time of Lord Milner.
Mm-hmm.
Lord Milner was the mentor of Lionel Curtis, who was behind the creation of Chatham House. So Lord Milner is extremely important. These are the roads.
When was he about?
This is turn of the century, turn of the end of the Boer War. So the creation of the modern state of South Africa. So that element has always been there. Historically, it's always been there. The roads, the Rothschild circles have always been there. So getting back to the mineral resources, well, I want to point out that South Africa under apartheid, this is not me promoting apartheid at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just pointing out the facts that South Africa under apartheid ran an extremely successful economy. It was world class in so many things. I couldn't list them all. And why was it? This is the important thing.
But before we do that, so I just want to get clear why. I want people to know why South Africa is so valuable. And it has gold.
A brief summary, it has a wide variety of minerals, the famous ones being platinum and gold. A substantial portion of the platinum and gold ever mined in human history comes out of South Africa. There's also copper, that's very important at the moment. And then there's a whole range of other metals which are important in microelectronics. So there are probably 40 minerals where South Africa has a strategically important stock under the ground. Some of them have been quite significantly depleted in 130 odd years of mining activity. So notably, our gold mines are going deeper and deeper, and the production rate is continually forecast to decrease, although as things roll onwards and the situation evolves, that rate of decrease either doesn't appear or is much slower than people expect. But I should have mentioned iron ore as well, and coal. There's lots of coal in South Africa.
And gas,
there's natural gas offshore.
Right. Yes, and great weather and elephants as well. Mustn't forget those.
Yes.
And beauty, incredible beauty. So good.
Spectacular beaches.
Okay, well, I might go and conquer it later on. PD.
But Nick, so Rich, getting back to the question of South Africa under apartheid, okay? So we're going back to what I was talking about with Ibrahim Traore and Thomas Sankara, and the dedication to the physical economy. And the physical economy was the old school system of running an economy. It's not, it's common sense, right? Okay, so how do you run a successful economy? You have the Treasury issues money, issues credit for things, the important things that progress a nation, like your infrastructure, your water sanitation, your education, all the things, energy, food, all the things that make a country sovereign. So under apartheid, South Africa was world-class in nuclear technology, which is quite astonishing. It designed the pebble bed reactor, phenomenal breakthrough in science and generating electricity being the backbone of the economy. Eskom, the parastatal, the formerly parastatal energy utility, used to produce surplus electricity. Now it can't even keep the lights on. Other things, the first heart transplant, the veterinary sciences in South Africa were world class. So many things were. State airline, Sasol, they made oil from infrastructure.
Yep.
Phenomenal.
Amazing infrastructure, breakthroughs in tunneling and bridge building and dam building, in hydroelectric schemes and balancing of electric grids. These were all innovations that took place in South Africa between roughly the Second World War and the late 1980s, when sanctions began to take their toll.
Right.
So
Now,
my point being,
are you saying that, are you arguing for South Africa returning to a racist apartheid state because things were better then? I didn't think so.
No, so the point I'm making, okay, is that it was so successful under apartheid because it adhered to the system of the physical economy, okay?
Right.
That's why it was so successful. What we have had subsequently is under the post 1994, under the ANC, and now under the ANC-led government, we have had a complete breakdown of the physical economy, complete breakdown. So
a financialization has taken place. The financial sector, as in the US and UK and Australia and Canada, the financial sector has boomed. And PD is entirely correct. This is very accurate material. So he's giving you the physical economy has more or less broken down, and it's just up to people like me running little private equity firms to try and keep things going,
So the globalist model, that lending, like very roughly, very broadly, right, lending countries large amounts of money, getting them into debt, then using the debt as a way of strip mining the resources so they no longer have autonomy and sovereignty, then using that money that is extracted to support and furnish insurgent groups to keep everybody restless and restive and in conflict, so the country can't be sovereign, can't be independent.
Nick, can I say it's slightly different in South Africa according to what I can see, okay? So you have the ANC, they have been permitted, they have been told to follow the Western model. So everything that's happening in South Africa is actually happening here in the UK. The potholes in South Africa are big enough to plant trees in. So we haven't quite got potholes that big yet. The medical, the health service is breaking down. The education system is breaking down. The military, the armed forces, the Navy, these have been dismantled. They have been they've been weakened to such an extent they are no longer effective. So everything that is happening in South Africa is happening in the UK and many other European countries like Germany. They can barely keep the lights on anymore. They can't run industry. And that's South Africa's crucial problem, is it can no longer run industry because it can't attract foreign investment, because foreign investment needs to know that they have electricity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yes.
So the primaries of the economy have been destroyed.
Does South Africa also have open borders? Just want to get that in.
Completely.
So are people being imported from the Middle East and?
No, not from the Middle East, from other
parts of
African countries,
Yeah.
driven by need.
Nigeria, the Congo, Somalia, Zimbabwe is a big one. There are multiple countries who from which we have an influx of people.
Furnished by NGOs that are
It
connected
doesn't
with the
even need
United
to
Nations.
be. It doesn't even really need to be. You don't need the kind of support that government has given immigration in places like Canada and the UK. There's plenty of hardship to go around in a lot of those source countries, and a certain percentage of those populations, the most industrious and creative and brave people in those countries will find one way or another to make their way all the way down sub-Saharan Africa, cross one of the borders and establish themselves in South Africa. That's just a economic reality. It doesn't take much government capacitation.
Right. And this is because South Africa still remains an economic draw compared to, say, people coming from the
Yes.
war-torn regions of the Congo.
Yes,
Okay.
we're still the beneficiaries of the magnificent infrastructure established under the British Empire and later under the Afrikaner nationalist government.
Okay. All right. Please, Petey, carry on.
Okay, so I would like to point out something which I think is very, very important, and that is South Africa at present is in extremely dangerous waters, extremely dangerous. And what they have done for all this time is an attack on the state. The state is the primary, okay? So they are driving everything.
Who's they? The globalists?
Yes, this is, okay, City of London, globalists. This is an attack on the state of South Africa. Everything that has happened most recently under Cyril Ramaphosa, complete ransacking. I mean, this is corruption on steroids. It really is. They have ransacked everything. They have bankrupted municipalities, right? There are 259, 57 municipalities in South Africa. Only 34 of them are functional. Only 34. Those municipalities are there to deliver services, okay? Water, sewerage, security. None of that exists. Those municipalities cannot account for the billions of rands that have gone through them. The corruption is on steroids. It is quite mind-blowing.
Can either of you give me an example of corruption, just to paint a picture of an
the
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Go on, Nick.
Go for it, PD.
Oh.
I was just going to say about the Matlanga Commission being the most recent one, and the corruption in the police. So you have such grand scale corruption that they call it a mafia state. Okay, so South Africa, and I would definitely concur with that. South Africa is a mafia state. You have the mafia. This is like Chicago back in the day. You have these the criminal underworld are running government. So they have members, there's the politicians in their pockets. And this is across the board with the political parties.
So I'll give another example. We have hospitals, public hospitals in South Africa managed at a provincial level. And recently it was uncovered that a major hospital in one of the provinces had almost its entire procurement budget diverted into administrators' pockets. And it was, this is to the tune of £100 million. And that may not sound like a huge sum of money in the UK, but let me tell you, in South Africa, that's an enormous sum of money. And it's quite flagrant. This is something that goes on for years before somebody blows a whistle and then somebody forms a commission and does nothing about it.
Right. Okay. Listening to both of you, the sense that I have on a fractal level, you have these globalist entities extracting wealth from a nation at a macro scale. Then you have the so-called leaders, the political leaders, the civil leaders in that nation doing the same thing, extracting wealth from the people below them. And then you might have local leaders and local gangsters and local robbers or whatever extracting wealth from the people. So it's wealth extraction all the way down.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I would say that that's pretty much been going on for 130 years. There was a period when the country was permitted to accrue great infrastructure and so on, but it was all in the service of resource extraction. People forget that the de facto apartheid prior to the formation of the Republic in 1961 was very much an Anglo-American invention. In fact, the firm that pioneered this migrant labor system that ultimately led to apartheid was a firm called Anglo-American. Um,
Interesting.
the, the, that family, the Oppenheimer family, were heavily involved in South African politics, and our current president, President Ramaphosa, is a creature of Anglo-American. He was groomed by them. Likewise, Patrice Motsepe, his brother-in-law, who happens to be a trustee of the World Economic Forum, is similarly groomed, and the candidates who have been put forward as potential replacements down the line, similarly groomed by the Brenthurst Foundation, which is allied with the Council for Foreign Relations. The story of the entanglement of South Africa with the Anglo-American establishment is a very old story and one that has never really let up.
Yeah.
And the
Nick,
De Beers
excuse me, PD, excuse me a second. Nick, that's so great what you say, right? And it chimes in with the sort of work that you do, PD, and the coverage that I do with other people like Matt Errett and Robert Ingrahams about how our agencies that we rely on aren't working in service of us as people, but are working in service of these think tanks and these large entities that are pulling the strings in the background. Please carry
So
on.
I haven't gotten to what my theory is of what they're trying to do. Can I have a minute to do that?
Sure.
Yeah. So my sense is that the establishment's looking at South Africa and saying, "Oh dear, we've overcooked this. The state is so incapacitated that the ability to extract resources from South Africa has now become compromised, and we need to fix this." And they had a dream of inserting the Tony Blair Institute into South Africa with its wonderful centralized systems and so on. But guess what? Centralized systems don't work all that well, and you actually do need local competence. And the only way in which you're going to re-establish local competence in South Africa is by the emergence of an establishment-supported strongman who basically shuts down the existing system and begins the regeneration of the system with competent bureaucrats in place. And that has to be done by force. It's not going to be done by way of any kind of political sea change. They're not going to be able to persuade the vast majority of South Africans to get the election result close enough to a point where a dominion system could shift the result into the hands of an establishment-favored replacement who could begin the project of recapacitating the South African state. So I think they're trying to set up a narrative that justifies a more vociferous intervention. And it's more than simply the narrative around white farmers and race laws in South Africa. There's also been this setup, which looked like a setup from the word go, of the Iran, apparently funding the ANC government to take Israel to the International Court of Justice 2 years ago, in response to the Palestinian genocide. I think that was a setup. The whole formation of BRICS and South Africa now conducting a military exercise that involves Iran, Russia, and what was the other country, PD? I think it might have been China. I'm not sure.
I think so, China,
Yeah. So these all look to me like highly staged and artificial events that are designed to give pretexts to a greater intervention down the line. And it's early days. And this will evolve over the coming years. But that's my theory: is we are being set up for when I say we, I mean world opinion is being manipulated towards a situation where a stronger intervention in South Africa is politically plausible.
Okay, PD.
Well, I wanted to say, Marco Rubio, they're saying about Marco Rubio running Cuba, because he's got Cuban origin, right? So because I really like the Trump administration, so I want somebody in the Trump administration to find with somebody with a South African connection and go and run South Africa, because I can't see anyone else been capable of doing it. I've been thinking, okay, the military coup. South Africa needs a military coup like Ibrahim Traore. Problem is, the military has been incapacitated. And get this one, okay? The government tried to outsource the Navy. They tried outsourcing the South African Navy. It's quite unbelievable. To a PMC. So this is what they've been doing. You see, the whole globalist project is about
PMC, a private mercenary company.
Military
company.
yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. So they've defunded the forces and the Navy to such an extent the Navy can't patrol the territorial waters of South Africa. It's the primary purpose of any Navy. So the chief of the Navy said recently about his concerns. And of course, you see this all fits in with what is happening because it's all by design. You incapacitate the Navy. The Navy can't intercept ships coming in. And what you have is this complete ballooning of the drugs trade and of the illicit mineral trade. So South Africa is effectively running on a black market economy. The scale of it is quite phenomenal. So everything, tobacco, British American Tobacco, one of the biggest tobacco firm, that's Rupert, I think. And, you know, they are going out of business because of the illegal cigarette trade. Who's behind, who's in with that illegal cigarette trade? And Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, who stopped people from buying cigarettes during COVID. And a member of her family
the beneficiary.
is a beneficiary. And this is happening across the board. Yeah, it's the Zamazamas. Sorry.
I think there's something worth picking up on in what you're saying, which is just to emphasize the extent to which black markets and money laundering have become dominant in sub-Saharan Africa in general. I mean, I went earlier this year to Zimbabwe, which is a country that I'm very attached to because of my interest in nature and wildlife. And so I travel there regularly. But this time I was in a region where there are illegal gold mines and other types of mine as well. But what impressed me was the extent to which there is completely unmeasured wealth and income generation. It's a very extractive and ugly thing to witness because you can imagine that an illegal gold mine is conducted without any regard for environmental considerations or public health considerations. I mean, it is quite ghastly to behold.
Or worker
what
safety.
Impressed me, yeah, worker safety, forget about it. But yeah, if you want to see a hotbed for angry young men, go and visit the highlands of Zimbabwe in the east. It is truly appalling. But the important point is that a big fraction of the economy is unmeasured and probably unmeasurable because it takes place in this kind of completely dark fashion. And that is a very important factor everywhere in sub-Saharan Africa, not excluding South Africa. A big portion of our economy now goes unmeasured. And that's why you repeatedly see these kind of normie economists flummoxed as to why the retail sector is so buoyant. The reason for that is they're not recording the income that gives rise to that consumption.
But it's against the state, isn't it? The whole operation is anti-state.
It erodes the state.
Yeah. It undermines the state. It allows these Western hegemons to continue to extract resources at much lower cost than they would otherwise, and to be able to do so because you don't want to strong. I mean, what's the problem with Russia? What's the issue that the Europeans have with Russia is that Russia has a strong state that is resistant to European plunder. I mean, the bloody cheek of it, keeping resources for themselves. What's wrong with Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso? He won't let France continue to plunder Burkina Faso. Bloody hell, we can't be having that. So then what we need to do is to get open borders, to get lots and lots of insurgent groups in there that can go around terrorizing other nations, and then those people from those nations like the Congo and Uganda and Rwanda can then go through into South Africa to destabilize it further, to engage in the black market economy because they're there illegally. That undermines the state. And then the civil servants who are running the services don't have any bloody money because there's no income coming through from the government. So then they're extracting from the people that they're supposed to be serving in the form of bribes and embezzlement and stuff. Oh, it's all wonderful. Not. And then the thing that listening to you there, the thing that I'm beginning to wonder is in terms of the assaults on white farmers. So on the one hand, it could be argued, oh, that's just propaganda, but I don't think that's the case. What that does, I think it serves two purposes. One is that it deprives South Africa of self-sufficiency when it comes to food, which is something that the globalists are doing through Europe, the UK, Ireland. They were doing it in Biden's America. They're probably doing it in Australia and New Zealand because you want to, hungry people are easier to control. It destabilizes the nation further because it's not self-sufficient in food. It has to import the food. And the other thing that it does, it sets one group of ants against this other group of ants, which is very old, tried and tested method by the British with the Western hegemons, however you might frame them. So what is going on?
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's the story, because
it may not be the story, right? But I suppose it's a sort of effect of it, an outcome of it anyway.
No, but it's not the effect. You see, that's where I differ.
Oh.
The farm murder phenomenon is old. It's been going on for 2 decades, and I agree with you. It's redolent of outside influence and being an organized campaign, not just a activity of criminals trying to, prey upon geographically remote locations that are easy picking. I don't think the latter is the story. The former is the story. There's a concerted campaign at work here. But what over the last decade, agricultural output has been increasing in South Africa. So, if the plan is to cause people to be hungry, then it's not having that effect. And I always say, look at the results. Don't theorize first. Root yourself in the facts. Now, of course, the facts could be misrepresented, but I'm not too sure that it's very easy to do that. And I'm invested in agricultural support businesses, and I can see that demand for their products is going very well. So I think that is probably the case, that South African agricultural output is indeed increasing. But another thing is happening. It's becoming more and more centrally controlled. And I think that is possibly the motive. We've seen it elsewhere, the attempts in the UK to economically disenfranchise family-owned farms and to put agricultural land in the hands of larger corporations and so on. Down the line, there may well be a depopulation agenda behind that and so on. But for the time being, it doesn't look as if the motive is to decapacitate South African agriculture.
Okay. All right. PD, anything you want to say on that?
Yeah, I think also the divisiveness that has a lot. I agree with that it pits one group against another. And I'd like to say on that point, South Africa have the wrong man as the father of the nation. So at the moment, they've had Nelson Mandela as the father of the nation, and they should have had, or they can adopt, if they look into it, if we look into it, a man called Robert Mangaliswa Sobukwe. And Sobukwe is one of my mentors. I love what he said. I love what he believed in. And one of the most important things about him was he said there is only one race, and that is the human race.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more I could say about Sobukwe. He was an Africanist. He wasn't a black nationalist. And There's a key difference. The black nationalism that the British establishment have always cultivated. It's key to a lot of what's happening across the continent. And of course, that black nationalism that has been cultivated is how the ANC has drifted towards, if they weren't always somehow infected by that. And, it is the victim mindset. It's what's running Rwanda, that hideous administration of the mass murdering Paul Kagame and his RPF are running on this victim they hide behind something. They're hiding behind the state of victimhood. And that's what that corrupted form of Black nationalism does. It's extremely harmful.
Yes. And then we've seen that in I've seen that certainly in the subcontinent, where you had Muslim nationalism and the rise of Hindu nationalism, and then you have a split within countries, and also the separation of India into East and West Pakistan. East is now Bangladesh. So it's that imperial playbook of divide and rule once again in a former British colony, when in fact I think virtually all of Africa was at one point under the thumb of European imperialists very recently.
Yeah.
Now,
Ethiopia.
yes. Now I'm going to ask people to
too.
comment, subscribe, and like, and tell us. Let me know, what is it you found interesting about this video, and if you didn't find anything interesting, let us know. Perhaps your comment will be the most interesting thing on this video, right? And Nick, PD, thank you so much. We will be back again to discuss issues of South Africa, of Africa. I really appreciate how you've both been in this conversation, the way we've danced together. I'll have all the links in the description below. Everybody, look forward to speaking to you soon. All the best. Bye-bye.